This Department of Justice is sending the message that if you're wealthy, if you're powerful, if you are well-connected, you won't be held accountable even if you abuse children. You know, it's after Congress passed the Epstein Files Transparency Act and DOJ finally began to release the files, your department exposed survivors' names, their sensitive personal information, and even nude photos, while redacting names of alleged perpetrators of those crimes. The message that sends is this Department of Justice worked harder to protect the privacy of potential child abusers than the survivors. Your predecessor refused to apologize to those victims, but I want to give you the same opportunity to apologize for the way the department handled the release of these documents. Will you apologize to the survivors?
When the president passed the Epstein Transparency Act, that was the only time, when the president signed the Transparency Act, that was when we were legally allowed to release the files. Prior to the passage of the act, which you all passed, I agree.
That is so not the question I'm asking.
It was the question you asked. You asked 5 or 6 questions. I'm answering them in order.
No,
that was one of the questions you asked.
The question I want you to answer is, will you apologize to the victims whose names, sensitive personal information, and even nude photos were not redacted by your department? Will you apologize
to them? Of course.
That
was, we never want to release a single victim's name.
That is what they are hearing.
But can I answer the question, please? Is
I'm
it fair?
asking if you'll apologize.
So I just said yes, but I would like an explanation to be given to that. What this act did is it required us to review over 6 million pieces of paper in a very short period of time. And so 0.001%, we made mistakes, and we owned up to them. And the second that a victim or their lawyer told us that we made a mistake, we pulled that document down, and we put lawyers 24/7 in being responsive to victims and their lawyers to make sure that we fixed every single problem. And so yes,
I hear your anger.
I'm not angry. No, I'm not angry.
I hear
I'm just making sure it's understood that we matter.
There are nude photos released. I just want to hear you say I apologize to those victims.
So as I just said, of course, any time we release a victim's name that shouldn't be released, we have failed as a Department of Justice. And so we have to do everything that we can to not fail.
Well, I haven't heard the words I apologize.
I'm trying to give you an explanation of what happened. I don't think you're really interested in that because you keep on cutting me off.
But I have a few more questions here, and I want to know, and I know that Senator Van Hollen raised this, but I want to ask, will you personally commit to meeting with the survivors? I have heard from them personally that DOJ refused to meet them, and I'm asking about you. I'm asking about the Justice Department reaching out to them to be heard, not waiting for them to navigate a legal system that has obviously repeatedly failed them so far.
Can I answer?
Yeah, will you reach out to them?
So, as we have said repeatedly, of course, any lawyer, now if a victim has a lawyer, I'm not allowed to reach out to the victim directly, you know that. But any lawyer can reach out to the Department of Justice. They have, and I've met with many victims and their lawyers, as has the FBI, as has the SDNY. We will always meet with victims' counsel. Any victim or their lawyer can come forward to the FBI
with these
at
women,
any time.
and I've met with them, and I know Senator Van Hollen has, and so many other. They are personally so feeling abused again and again by what happened to them originally, and now but what's happening by them. I am saying to you, as a human being, don't make them navigate a system that is impossible to navigate, that's already abused them. Reach out and ask to meet with them.
You're asking me to call, you want me to personally call the victims? Is that what you're asking me to do?
I can help you reach them.
Oh, that would be great. Yes, because we have said from day one,
of course,
there have been members that have done that. And we immediately reach out to the victims or their lawyers when the lawyers want and they say they want to do it.
We will follow up on that. Thank you very much.
What began as a procedural exchange about document handling quickly turned into something much larger, a confrontation over institutional accountability, victim protection, and whether the Department of Justice fully grasped the human consequences of its own actions. Senator Patty Murray did not frame this hearing as a technical disagreement over records management. She framed it as a moral failure. Her central accusation was blunt. The Justice Department appeared to protect alleged perpetrators more carefully than the victims whose identities and private material were exposed during the release of the Epstein-related documents. That distinction matters because hearings like this are rarely about a single administrative mistake. They are about what institutions signal through their behavior. Murray's argument was not simply that errors occurred. It was that the imbalance of protection revealed something deeper about priorities inside the system itself. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche responded first with process. He explained that the department was legally permitted to release the files only after passage of the Epstein Transparency Act and emphasized the enormous scale of the review process, more than 6 million documents examined under severe time pressure. That response was institutionally logical. But it did not address the emotional core of the exchange. Murray was not asking whether the review process was difficult. She was asking whether the Department of Justice would plainly acknowledge the harm done to victims whose names, personal information, and even explicit images were reportedly exposed. This is where the hearing shifted from administrative defense into rhetorical conflict. Blanche repeatedly tried to contextualize the mistakes. He argued the department corrected errors immediately once identified, removed documents when notified, and assigned staff around the clock to respond to victims and attorneys. But Murray kept narrowing the discussion back to a single phrase, "I apologize." That insistence was strategic. In congressional hearings, lawmakers often understand that wording itself becomes the story. An explanation can dilute responsibility. A direct apology creates a definitive public record. Murray appeared determined to force that distinction into the open. What made the exchange notable was not shouting or dramatic theatrics. It was the contrast between institutional language and personal language. Blanche spoke as a government official describing systems, procedures, legal limitations, and response protocols. Murray increasingly spoke as an advocate for people who, in her words, felt abused again by the very institutions supposedly meant to protect them. That gap defined the hearing. At one point, Murray explicitly rejected the framing that she was simply angry. Instead, she redirected attention back to the victims and the publication of nude photographs. The implication was clear: this was not about political performance. It was about whether government officials fully understood the human impact of bureaucratic failure. The hearing also exposed a recurring tension inside federal institutions: the difference between procedural accountability and moral accountability. Procedural accountability asks, were the errors corrected? Were safeguards implemented? Were policies followed afterward? Moral accountability asks something else entirely. Did leadership publicly acknowledge the harm in direct human terms? Did victims feel heard? Did the institution behave with empathy equal to its legal authority? Those two forms of accountability often overlap imperfectly, and this exchange demonstrated that divide in real time. The final portion of the hearing may ultimately matter more than the argument over wording itself. Murray pressed Blanche on whether the department would proactively reach out to survivors rather than forcing them to navigate what she described as an already painful and inaccessible legal system. Blanche responded that the department had met with victims and their attorneys and remained open to additional contact. But Murray's broader point remained unresolved. Should institutions wait for traumatized individuals to seek help, or should institutional leadership take the first step toward repair? That question extends beyond this single hearing. Every large bureaucracy relies on procedures. But public trust is rarely built through procedures alone. It is built through the perception that institutions understand the real-world consequences of their actions, especially when vulnerable people are involved. What made this exchange politically significant was not whether mistakes occurred. Blanche openly acknowledged mistakes did happen. The real issue was whether the Justice Department communicated accountability in a way victims themselves could recognize as genuine. And that is often where public confidence is either rebuilt or permanently damaged. But what do you think? When government agencies make serious errors involving victims' privacy and safety, is correcting the mistake enough, or does leadership owe something more direct and personal? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if you value long-form congressional analysis that goes beyond headlines and examines what these hearings actually reveal about power, oversight, and accountability, make sure to like this video, subscribe to Capitol Oversight, and turn on notifications so you never miss the next breakdown.